This is the iPhone XR, and I've been using it for about, I think, 2 weeks, a little bit more than that right now, and it has been such an excellent device. There's so many, phones coming out, and there's a lot I want to cover, there's a lot I can't, but the XR is something that I was not sure about when it first announced. I obviously got the XS Max, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to cover the XR as well, because it didn't initially really hit me as something that I don't know. I wasn't really I wasn't against it or anything, but I just wasn't a fan of it. But after a little bit, after a lot of the reviews started coming in and people started saying it is actually really good, I was like, okay, let's see. So I decided to put a little bit of thought into it, and I finally thought, you know what, let's try it out, let's see what it's like. And it should be a good comparison point since I've been using the XS Max. Jumping to this should give me an idea of what's missing, if something is, or what it's like. So I bought the phone and I switched on that day from my XS Max, and the first thing that really shocked me was how different it isn't. It's so similar in so many ways, it's really hard to think about it. And to be very honest, I've actually fallen in love with this phone. So I'm going to talk about why I love this phone in this video. So starting off with number one, it has to be the design and the way it's just been implemented. Everything looks so good on the phone. I really like the single camera design over the dual. I don't know, I've never really liked the way dual cameras look on a phone, especially with these more and more complex, weird cameras set up, outlook things. I don't know, this single camera just looks so good. The back is really clean. I love the color options. Now, personally, I love the red the most. The red and black combo just looks so good. I know a lot of people like the more brighter colors. Personally, I like the red. Black and white I think those are like the most sedate options. Those are something that nobody could go wrong with. They don't attract attention in any way. They just fly under the radar pretty good if you're that kind of person. But if you're someone who likes loud colors, someone who kind of likes that pop, you got a lot of options, which is something Apple usually doesn't do. But 6 color options is a pretty big deal. The last time we had that was the iPhone 7 Plus, and those colors weren't even like really that. They were pretty normal-ish colors, to be honest with you. Those are pretty standard Apple colors. The only one that was really different was the jet black. Number two, identical performance to the XS and XS Max. As I said, coming from that XS really put things in perspective for me, because if I would have come from the 10, I wouldn't have really, it would have been a little bit of a different experience. But since I've used the XS and XS Max, they are exactly the same as the XR. The performance, there hasn't been one area where I found performance was better on the XS or XS Max. It has just been so much, it's just so same. And that makes a lot of sense because they share the same processor and everything. The only difference is there's 1 gig less RAM in this, but iOS is so well optimized, you're just not going to notice it. Unless you're running deliberate speed tests side by side, you're never going to see that difference in that 1 gig of RAM. But as I said, I think that's a compromise. That was a fair compromise they made. The iPhone 10 had 3 gigs of RAM, and it is still doing just fine. And I'm pretty sure it's going to do just fine moving on well into the future. So talking about the XS, we got to talk about the camera, which is, again, both the front and the back are carried over from the XS Max. The only thing you're not getting is the second camera on the back, that the telephoto lens. Besides that, you get almost every other option. There is no, compromise. In the past, with the Plus model and the normal phones, you'd get some kind of compromise if you bought the cheaper phone. This time, there's no such thing. You got everything in this that you have in the XS, XS Max. The only thing that is different is portrait mode is now more wide-angled than the iPhone XS because it doesn't have that telephoto lens. Otherwise, it's all the same. And honestly, to be very frank, I actually prefer the wide-angle portrait more than I preferred the XS as more cropped-in portrait. That's a complaint I've had from day one. I just feel like it felt too cropped in. And you could only really get facial shots still about this. You can get your body or the background in the photo too much, unless you're standing really far back. But again, then if you stand too far back, the portrait mode wouldn't work on the XS and XS Max either. So catch and take. But otherwise, cameras are great. Audio is amazing. Even this has the same stereo audio video recording on. Wow, that was a lot of words. Stereo video recording for audio on the XS and XS Max have it as well. The quality is unbelievable. Definitely the best video you can get on a phone, hands down. Camera is really good as well. You have the Smart HDR, same as the XS Max, and it really is amazing. It just gives you so many better results. A huge step up from the 10. You know, that's definitely the one place where Apple did change up the game. Smart HDR is something Pixel was doing for a while, and now that iPhone has adopted it, it does do a lot of cool things. And I really like the photos that the 10s and the 10R and 10s can take. Another thing that we got over from the 10s is the stereo speakers. So same setup, one down here, one up here from the earpiece, and they sound exactly the same. I had the 10s Max and this side by side, trying to figure out if the speakers were different. They are they're exactly the same loudness. It was like 0.1 of a difference. That's like just margin of error. I'm sorry. You've got the same quality, same everything. It just sounds so good. The speakers are really, really nice. That's something I've loved about iPhones in the recent years. They got really, really good with their speakers. Ever since they implemented the dual speaker from the 7 onwards, things have just changed and they sound really good. So moving on to one thing that this does not share with the 10s and 10s Max, and one thing that has been controversial for sure, the pricing. So this is starting at $750. Personally, I think that this is a sweet spot for iPhones. iPhones have never been cheap, people. They've always been the premium side of phones. Now just the new premium starts at $750. For the longest time it was $650. Now it's $750 to get in the entry-level model. Yes, that's a price jump, but given what you're getting, I think it's justified. Of course, it's not going to be for everyone. There's a lot more budget options. If we start talking about budget, there's things for $500, $300, $100. It just keeps going and trickling down. Cheap phones are really good now, and it's just a matter of if you care enough about some certain aspects. So if you're someone who likes to use iOS, that is something that you're going to pay for. Same way, if you're someone who just wants a cheap phone, you're not going to care if it has iOS or Android or whatever. And that's where a lot of people, I think, get confused when they're talking about the 10R, how it's overpriced. It shouldn't be $750. It only has less than a 10. Yeah, I think that right now the 10R sits at the perfect entry-level price with the combination of things it gives. The features it has for the entry-level model, I think it's perfectly done. Yes, it could be $100 cheaper. Preferably, I would have liked to see it start at $700. That would have been the sweet spot in my opinion, but $750 isn't that bad either. Definitely way cheaper compared to the 10s and 10s Max. 25% right off the bat without even looking at the 10s Max's price. And it's just definitely it's a good option is what I'm trying to say. And moving on, number 6, we're talking about those good options, the pricing and all that. I think that for the iPhone XR, Apple has done something they haven't done in a long time and actually provided a good balance of storage options. So right now for the 10s and 10s Max, you have 64, 256, 512. That 64 to 256 jump never made sense to me on the iPhone X. I was so annoyed that I had to pay. I was okay with 128 gigs, but there's no way I could have done 64. So I had to pay the extra for the 256 over the 64 just because I had the 128 before, and I just had so much stuff, I couldn't move back to 64, which sucks because honestly, when you look at it, that was all I needed. But now with the 10R, you've got the best options. You got 64, 128, 256. And the best part, I think, is the 64 to 128 jump is only $50. So $50 is absolutely killer pricing, I think. And I think they've done it on purpose. That pricing is going to entice so many people to jump up to the 128. It's going to be like, when you see it, $750 to $800 for that double storage, just getting way more for what you're paying. Also, a lot of people who use iPhones keep them for a long time, so having a lot of storage is really going to be an enticing option just for $50. And I think this time, Apple has done really well with pricing the storage options and the storage options they provided. So if you guys, if you guys are ever like me who are kind of annoyed with the Apple storage weird fiasco going on, 10R does fix that, and I really like that about it. And moving on, number 7, the most important, I think, it's just the thing I love about this phone the most, and this is the one thing that is going to either keep me forever debating between the 10s Max and 10R or just going to drive me insane, and that is battery life. So this phone has the best battery life, I'm going to say, I think it's, on any phone I've ever used, let alone an iPhone. So in the past, for me, any iPhone I used was at least I had to charge up once in the day, in the middle of the day, top it up. So I'd start unplug in the morning at 100, probably around 4 or 5, sometimes 6. I'd have to plug in for a couple minutes again to bring it back up so I could get through the rest of the day. With the XS Max, for the first time in ever, I did not have that problem. I could get through an entire day, regardless of what I was doing, without having to top up. Yes, I would be almost dead. I would be at like 10% or 15%, maybe even lower, but I would get through the day without a problem. On lighter usage days, I'd have way more than that, but on my normal usage, 10 to 15%. With this phone, it's way more. It's like 20-25% left over at the end of the day. And this phone, I'm telling you, has almost no issues going above 8 hours of screen on time on a regular basis. I've been having 8-hour days easy on the screen. It's so nice to have a phone that you don't have to worry about charge. And that being an iPhone really seals the deal even more for me. Android phones have been able to do this for a while. They just pack in massive batteries and make it work. But this is just a case of optimization, low power things, and really making everything work perfectly with everything so that you get the most efficient experience of them all. And this phone just proves it. So that battery life is what I'm talking about. So the XS Max, I love the display, but the 10R's battery is something I just keep thinking about. So that's what I'm going to have to basically think about the entire time now that I own these two phones. Which one do I want to keep in my pocket? Let me know what you guys think, guys. So that's it for this video, guys. Let me know what you think about the 10R. Do you agree with me? Do you not agree with me? Let's start a conversation down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.